Today on CityCast Madison. It's the Friday News Roundup, and this week I'm joined by CityCast Madison's Haley Sperling and Rob Thomas. We're getting into what we know so far in the aftermath of the Abundant Life Christian School shooting, updates on the arrest of Alder Charles Miazde, and avoiding treading on thin ice, both for you outdoors and a couple of our city's ice arenas that are looking for financial help from the city. It's Friday, December 20th. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. All right, welcome to the Friday News Roundup. I've got some spunk in that, but I'm not going to lie, it's been a very hard week. Very dark and a lot of tough news, but we're here to share it. Joining me today is the leader of this here podcast, Haley Sperling. Hello.
Hi, Bianca. How are you?
I'm okay. And our newsletter editor, Rob Thomas. How goes it?
We made it to Friday. That's a victory in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And kicking us off this week is you, Haley, with the updates around the aftermath of the Abundant Life Christian School shooting.
Yeah. So just an update for folks who may not be caught up on the story. On Monday, our community was truly shaken when a 15-year-old student at Abundant Life Christian School over on Madison's east side opened fire in a study hall, killing 2 people and injuring 6 others. The alleged shooter herself also died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, according to police. And today we know a little bit more about the victims in this horrific tragedy, how the community has responded, and what exactly happened on that day. The shooting is being marked as the deadliest school shooting in Wisconsin ever recorded in a federal database. And nationally, it marked our country's 83rd school shooting of the year. And that's according to estimates from the Gun Violence Archive, Education Week, and Everytown for Gun Safety, who track these unfortunate events. And I think when we talk about this story, that it's important that we start with the victims, who the Dane County Medical Examiner has since identified as Ruby Vergara, who was 14, and Aaron West, who was 42. In a statement about West, the school said, quote, "ALCS is a better school for the work of Aaron West. She brought her love of Jesus and love of people to our staff and school family, all wrapped in a hug and topped with a smile. Her loss is a painful and deep one, and she will be greatly missed, not just among our staff, but our entire ALCS family." So that's Aaron West, who was a longtime substitute teacher at the school, and she held several other roles there as well, just very deeply ingrained in the community. And then Ruby Vergara, she was only a freshman. She had attended ALCS since kindergarten, and the school said that she was gifted in art and music. She was an avid reader. She loved singing and playing keyboard in the family worship band. A funeral service for her will be held this Saturday at City Church, but also streamed online for anyone who would like to pay their respects. As I mentioned before, 6 people were injured on Monday as well, and thankfully 4 have been discharged from the hospital, but Madison police say 2 students are still receiving treatment for their life-threatening injuries. On Tuesday night, the Madison community held a vigil at the Capitol building to honor the victims of this event and kind of come together as a community to grieve. The event was organized by the Boys and Girls Club of Dane County and drew hundreds of people out to the event. Bianca, I know you were there. I was there as well. How would you describe that scene?
I would describe it as the community coming together. It felt like, 100 people probably, and people holding their candles for the vigil and kind of huddled together, being close, people holding each other, and a lot of educational leaders locally, for sure, a lot of school board members, and I'm just very glad that I went. I felt like supported, and I feel like other people hopefully felt that. There were a lot of people there offering food and drink and hot cocoa, and I would say it was solemn. It felt powerful and poignant, and the musicians who sang had incredibly beautiful offerings. I know I was moved to tears more than once. There was a lot of press there, which I didn't particularly love all of the cameras blocking the visibility. I thought, but it was also right by Vel Phillips' statue, so there was some sort of, limitations on the space. It was a scene for sure.
Yeah. I think what struck me too is, it was a lot of different people. It was a lot of families with children. It was a lot of individuals. There were couples there. I think it was just people who truly wanted to be in the community and support the community themselves in this horrific event. And that's one thing that we've been talking about as we approach the new year is how much people want to be in their community. And it was really heartening, I think, for me to see people show up in that way. You mentioned there were speakers. Michael Johnson, the president and the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Dane County, was there. Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway made remarks. Madison School Superintendent Joe Gothard made remarks. And representatives also read statements from Senator Tammy Baldwin and Congressman Mark Pocan, who couldn't personally be in attendance, but wanted to express their condolences and support. I think one thing that struck me personally about this vigil and the whole event is that it just feels so unusual and foreign to me to see Madison as a city in mourning. When bad things happen here, we tend to immediately respond with actions, and those actions are usually protests, right? At this vigil, there weren't protest signs. It was candles and tears, and I think people are just really tired and really sad. And I'm sure that there will be protests to come because that is the city that we are. But it was really just kind of another version of Madison that I've been lucky enough to say that I haven't really seen in the past. So that was kind of the thing that struck me there. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I think that's a really good point. And I think also those protests, especially anti-gun violence protests, they do come out of that sadness in a lot of ways. And it felt right to not go to that immediately, to allow some space just for grieving and mourning. And so I think the Boys and Girls Club organized that vigil, and I think that was the right thing to do at the right time to sort of let people just kind of have that time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sometimes they say that anger is like a secondary emotion, that sadness is at the core, and anger is really important for action. But the fact that there could be that space where people allowed themselves to be sad, that was kind of my experience. We hear so many of these stories and you start to steal up, and it's like, can I even access the sadness? Because it's just, you don't want to be overwhelmed. But I was able to, and I felt like the community felt safe enough. Like our leaders felt like people, this was a moment for us as people to be together. And I feel that sadness for sure.
Yeah. And of course, the investigation is still ongoing. There are so many questions that we still don't have answers to, but there is some new information out there today. According to police, the alleged shooter's parents are cooperating with authorities. Authorities are still trying to understand the shooter's motivations, but new reporting from the Associated Press says that the 15-year-old shooter was in contact with a 20-year-old man in California who was allegedly planning to attack a government building with guns and explosives in conjunction with the Madison shooting. So kind of an interesting twist there. The FBI has seized the California man's weapons and has taken him in for questioning. And documents surrounding that questioning has shown that this man and the female shooter in Wisconsin, they were corresponding and talking about these events. So there's definitely going to be a lot more to follow there. And there is, again, still a lot to unravel here about motives. And I very much expect that the Madison police are going to be very slow and deliberate with the information that they release about this in the coming days and weeks. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. But in the meantime, if anyone listening does want to support the school community, an emergency fund has been set up by the United Way of Dane County. They've already raised more than $21,000 from roughly 300 donors, and we'll put a link to that donation page in our show notes.
All right, before we dive into any more news, let's take a quick break. All right, we're up with our second story, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, so the tragic news from Abundant Life this week, I mean, sort of incredibly overshadowed another very serious story, or the next step in a serious story in local news this week. And I just want to say up front that this story involves allegations of violence against women and sexual harassment. So you might want to consider that when listening and deciding whether to listen further. So just to back up a little, just over a week ago, you might remember that the Madison City Council censured Alderman Charles Miadze following an investigation into allegations of sexual harassment against 3 women. Well, last Thursday, Miadze was arrested, and on Monday, he was charged with 8 felonies. 3 counts of strangulation and suffocation, 2 counts of attempted burglary of a dwelling, substantial battery, burglary to commit battery, and false imprisonment. He was released after an initial hearing on Monday on a signature bond of $500 per count, so $4,000, and ordered not to have any contact with the alleged victim or her family. And now, so these allegations are separate from the allegations that the 3 women made, including from Alderman Juliana Bennett, which led to Miadze's censure. These allegations were made by former Deputy Mayor Gloria Reyes, who a very familiar name in Madison. She's a community leader. She's a former mayoral candidate and former Madison school board president. Reyes alleged years of abuse by Miadze, including physical violence and death threats while they were in a relationship between 2018 and 2021. And Reyes came out very publicly about these allegations and her story in an interview with Madison 365 last month, which we'll link to in our show notes. So in the complaint, Reyes says that she documented these incidents in real time during that period with photos and emails that she sent to herself. She says she has proof of a dozen incidents during that time period, but it's unclear if those other 4 allegations will lead to additional charges. According to the complaint, Reyes was bruised on her arms, neck, hips, and face a number of times. She also told the police detective about instances where she lost consciousness, and other incidences where Miadze allegedly broke into her house to steal back jewelry and gifts that he'd given her. So Miadze represents District 18 on the city's north side and has been accused now by at least 3 former partners of violence. I don't believe he's made any comments since he was arrested, but has said previously that he won't step down but won't run for re-election. This story just keeps on going, and I just wonder what will happen next and what more we'll learn.
And it's been such a painful one. And I feel like we should mention another piece. It's separate, but it's hard to not think of it in relationship, which is Juliana Bennett did announce earlier this week that she will not be seeking re-election on the council, which, hurt my heart, and it's totally understandable. She posted on her socials, and I'll just read part of why. But she said, quote, "As many saw at the last council meeting, I am carrying extremely heavy buckets that weren't my intention. I very much look forward to spending quality time with my dad, transitioning to the next step in my commitment to public service, and finally getting to just be 25 years old." End of quote. So obviously we interviewed her. She is one of the complainants who submitted to the city a claim of sexual harassment against Charles Miadze. And, I just can't even imagine the depths of stress and pain that whole process would have brought, but just felt like we should share that news as well, that she's no longer seeking to be on the council.
Yeah, that was a really emotional, really informative interview you did. And I felt I really understood that investigation better. And so it's not a huge surprise that this was the next step.
Yeah, we'll have to watch and see where this goes. I'm assuming there's going to be a whole lot more legal cases for us to review in the future, because there's court documents now, and there are court complaints, and there are arrests. So again, another huge story that we're just going to continue to keep an eye on.
And before we dive into any more news, and we're going to talk about something a little bit lighter on the other end, we promise, let's take a quick break. All right, we're back. And one thing, our city does have good things, despite everything, the horrible things that have happened this week, including the ice. I don't know. Have you guys seen folks out on the ice fishermen on our lakes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I have. And it makes me nervous for them because I literally saw people out on Monona Bay and it was 40 degrees out. I'm like, guys, what are you doing? Help. I'm scared for you.
Yeah, I honestly, I had a similar reaction, that was the conversation driving past. We're like, are they safe?
Are you sure?
Are you sure?
Well, you remember how it was really late last year, wasn't it, when it froze over? So, yeah. So it's I mean, just because there's ice doesn't mean there's ice,
Right,
Yeah.
right. Which is part of what, we kind of have to talk about. There's obviously been these fluctuating temperatures, so we need to be careful when we go out on the ice. It is such a part of our culture and we love our winter festivals and sports and activities on the lake. So we want to see it. And, as we're recording this right now, it is snowing. It is cold enough for ice to thicken, but you do have to be really, really careful. There was recent stories of two men in different parts of southeast Wisconsin who are reported to have fallen into their respective lakes and needing rescue. I also saw a story earlier this month. A beloved retired minister in Duluth passed away after falling in to Lake Superior. So the Wisconsin DNR doesn't track ice thickness, or weirdly doesn't offer guidance on safe minimum ice thickness for activities like ice skating or driving on the ice. That said, the Minnesota Department, Haley, tapping your state, of Natural Resources does share guidelines on its website. Sorry to call you out, DNR, but what the heck. It says that people should stay off the ice when it's less than 4 inches thick. When it's 4 inches thick or more, you can ice fish, you can walk on the ice. So 4 inches is not that much, it's not nothing, but we love the DNS Tackle and Bait Shop. We've had them on the podcast. If you are an ice fisherman in the area, you've likely heard of them, but they are a place that does actually keep tabs on Madison's lake and ice levels. I did check out their regular Madison area fish report before this conversation, and it's really sweet. I can't recommend it enough. But they did say, yes, last weekend some warm temperatures did impact ice cover, but then there are a few cold days that ice thickened, and there are spaces where you can safely be on the ice. But you really should be careful and recommend checking out that report because DNR does say there's no such thing as 100% safe ice, and you don't want hypothermia. But let's be honest, there is a hunger for being on the ice, and Madison does have indoor rinks. And there's actually a story on that it's way more complicated than I realized when I first started reading it. But the city is trying to save 2 indoor ice arenas. They are run by the nonprofit Madison Ice. And that nonprofit is currently defaulting on their major loan to the city. Yeah, so they are on thin ice, and they have been for a while. But yeah, so there's this ongoing relationship with the city and these arenas. And it's complicated because they need money, okay, and the city just asked taxpayers for a bunch of money, $22 million in a property tax hike to get the city out of a structural deficit. And now they're looking to bail out these ice arenas. And some people are asking, is it worth it? Do these arenas need to be bailed out? Are they truly in the financial stress that they say? And if we do bail them out, is this a viable long-term solution or possibly a Band-Aid that we'll need to re-administer in 10 years? So there are a lot of different opinions on this. A high level, the measure that's being put forward is by Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway and Westside Alder John Greger, who had one of the arenas in his district. They introduced a proposal to forgive this nonprofit's $1.6 million debt last November. And so this measure could be voted on as soon as next month from the Common Council. So I just want to kind of talk about the history. The city used to own and operate 2 indoor ice arenas. The ones in question, Hartmeyer Arena at 1834 Commercial Avenue on the north side and Madison Ice Arena on the west side. And then for a number of reasons, economic and operational, these are aging buildings. They decided they shouldn't be in that business. So they sold them both to the nonprofit Madison Ice, which was formed for the express purpose of taking these facilities over. The city signed a land contract with them that it should be paid off over the next 30 years. And if they default, the facilities come back to the city. Look, the city doesn't want them. The city doesn't want to handle them. But they made this supportive agreement because while they don't want to handle them, they do think that indoor ice arenas are important for Madison, that it's a public benefit for winter sports and recreation. So they don't want to see them crumble either. So the city's been supporting them. Fast forward to 2017, they've helped with over $1 million for, building improvements. Even before them, they helped them financially by extending their loan further. So there's been a lot of support. But then the pandemic hit and the nonprofit just basically stopped paying their debt. And they're now in default, and they say they can't afford the payments. And one of their rinks, the Hartmeyer one, needs substantial improvements. They're looking at it needing an energy-efficient roof, HVAC replacement, a new Zamboni, the thing that cleans the ice, locker room repairs, and more. And so there's a lot to be done. And the city is looking at relieving their debt with some stipulations. There's a new nonprofit that's formed to come save the day for the Hartmeyer location. East Madison Ice Collective is a new nonprofit that is looking to raise $3 million for that effort and in tandem with the city helping relieve the debt. So yeah, the city might possibly strike a deal again to save the rinks, but there are multiple naysayers speaking up. There are some concerns about the current configuration of leaders on this issue. Can they achieve sustainability and financial responsibility if the city bails them out? I saw a story from WRT, and it kind of laid out some questions of whether or not the nonprofit was so financially bad off during the pandemic, citing multiple surpluses over those years. So yeah, there's a lot of questions here. And there was also an opportunity, apparently, kind of an all-star NHL player, Ryan Suter. If you guys remember him, UW hockey star. He actually wanted to buy Hartmeyer, and for whatever reason, the folks running it over there, they blocked that sale. So people are kind of upset because apparently Suter now is building a new indoor-outdoor ice arena in DeForest. So that's something that we could have had here, So there are people do we want to invest in this? And also, let's be real, global warming is a thing, and it's making our outdoor rinks kind of question marks on whether people can rely on them for outdoor sports and recreation. So something's probably got to be done. But yeah, I didn't know anything about this. Now I do. Hopefully now you do too.
That's wild because Bob Suter, who's Ryan Suter's dad, literally owns the ice rink in Middleton. Why not let Ryan have one in Madison? It's kind of a little family business. I was also just very curious of looking up how much does a Zamboni cost?
I was curious about that.
There's an FAQ on Zamboni.com, the official website, that says the Model 100, which is the small tractor pulled unit, could be in the neighborhood of $10,000, but the full-size machines can be up to or in the low six figures. So kind of an expensive piece of equipment there you got.
I do see one here on eBay used for $15,000. So if I could be of any help to the
Rob,
city,
put in a bid.
Yeah, we could put the CityCast logo on the side of it.
Oh my God, yes. That's branding right there.
Well, we hope that that is something that people are going to have the opportunity to weigh in on, and the Common Council. There are questions, though, that people are why are you pushing this proposal to save them so fast and trying to make this fast? Some questions around transparency. But the ice is melting, so that's maybe they're trying to make moves.
This just feels like such a particularly Midwestern story, and such a good story for us to end on and kind of close out the year on. One thing we should tell folks is that we're going to be taking a break between now and the new year. You'll be hearing a few of our favorite episodes to keep you company in the meantime. But we will be back in your feeds with your guide to January in Madison 2025 on January the 2nd. So can't wait for that.
Yes. We love being in community with you, and we love doing this show and the newsletter. It's a beautiful place to be. So thanks for being here with us, and hopefully staying with us into next year.
Yay.
All right. Thanks for rounding up the news with me this week, y'all. Haley Sperling, thank you so much.
See ya in the new year.
And Rob, you as well.
See you next year, as every dad says right about now. Yeah.
That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, your host. We're produced by Adam Sage and Lizzie Goldsmith. Haley Sperling is our executive producer. Our theme music is by Carl Christensen. Rob Thomas is our newsletter editor. Don't forget, you can always get more news delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to Madison Minutes. And if you enjoyed today's show, why don't you share this podcast with someone who likes getting out on the ice? All right, see you back here in the new year with more news from around the city.